Yo, good evening. Welcome to Mi Casa. I'm Mike, your mentor, and I hope you're having a good Friday. And yeah, we got some good stuff to talk about tonight. We're talking about the relationship between fathers and daughters, which is extremely important, regardless if you have a daughter or not. It'll give you insight into your wife and uh, kind of some context as to maybe why she is the way she is, just so like we are the way that we are. So welcome. My name is Mike King, and this is my page, and I appreciate you being here with me and checking this video out. Show me a little love. What's up, Camilio? And drop a comment below. Hashtag live if you're watching this live. Hashtag replay if you're watching this or on the replay. Yeah, right. So who am I? Why should you be here? And why does this matter if you're new? So I had crazy childhood experiences, teenage experiences, and young life experiences because my father was in and out of prison. And really what that started a wound in my heart, a wound of abandonment, a wound of rejection, right? And an identity issue of who I really was and what that looked like. And for the most part throughout my childhood and my teenage years, I really struggled with that. And I was self-conscious, probably way more than I should have been. I wasn't always super confident in my abilities and my giftings, and that led me to try to fill that wound with other things. And the main thing that I tried to fill that wound with, what up, Charles? Thank you. The main thing I tried to fill that wound with was relationships with girls, right? At a very early age, very promiscuous, and I was looking for that love. I was looking for that acceptance that I didn't get from my father, and I didn't know how to get to the root of that. I didn't even realize that that's what I was doing at that time. And it wasn't until I got older and I found myself almost having blown up my marriage. Wife wanted to divorce me. Living in Chicago, not really knowing who I was, what my purpose was, just all these things, kind of almost like a perfect storm that was coming together, where I got exposed to some teachings, and these teachings come out of this book, The Quest for Authentic Manhood, and it changed my life because it asked me really direct, important, but hard questions that I had never thought of before. And the saying is true, right? You don't know what you don't know, and you don't learn this stuff in school. If you were lucky enough to have a father in your life, which only 50% of the people that watch this, that's the case. And then if you were one of those fortunate people to have a father in your life, 50% of those, your father wasn't emotionally or mentally present, and more than likely wasn't sharing this kind of stuff with you because he wasn't given this kind of stuff. Because these questions and these ideas about manhood and about stop lying to ourselves and understanding that we've all got woundedness and we all need to deal with that in order to become better people and reach the calling that we have on our lives as men, as fathers, as husbands, as friends, as leaders in this community. You're not just going to stumble your way upon that. Or if I shouldn't say you're not, you're very fortunate if you do. You're part of a small, super small minority. If I had to put a number on it, I'd say less than 1%, right? Because every guy that I come encounter with that starts to address these questions in their life, that starts to get exposure to this, light bulbs go off and connections start to form, and you look back and you're like, holy cow, like this makes complete sense. And that's like stage one, right? And then stage two is, okay, now that I'm realizing this, will I have the courage to go back and face that and to heal those heart wounds, so that I can move on, and leave those behind once and for all, right? And step into the calling that I have in my life. So that's what this page is about, is me taking all this wisdom that I've learned, not only through this workbook, but through my life and this experiences, and sharing it with other men, other people, because I don't like seeing other people struggle. That sucks. And if I've learned from both failing myself and from watching other people around me fail, and if I can help anybody else not to have not to experience those same failures, then by God, that's what I'm going to do. And for too long, I'm going to be 39 this year. For too long, I kept my mouth shut, and I didn't speak up, and I didn't say anything because, to be honest with you, I was afraid. I was afraid of what people might think. I was afraid of what I would think about myself. I was afraid of just a lot of things, I guess. And it really took some things in my life, some events to happen to some other people, and that's a long story that I've shared here before, but to kind of push me over the edge and say enough is enough. Like, I have a story, I have experience, I have wisdom, and how dare me to not share that, right, and not help other people through my story. So that's what this page is all about, and I've been coming on here every single day in some sort of format, just sharing what I know, to make people's lives a better place, to make this world a better place, because I know you're not stupid. All we have to do is look outside our window and see what's going on in this world, and the craziness that ensues, and the chaos that is going on, and that's a direct reflection, and that falls on our shoulders as men, because we haven't answered our calling, right? And until we look ourselves in the mirror and say, okay, enough is enough, it starts here, and I'm going to do something about it. I'm going to do something about the kind of husband that I am, that's about something, the kind of father that I am, the kind of friend that I am, the kind of leader in my community that I am. This world isn't going to get any better, and we're not going to be able to encourage and inspire our fellow brothers to make those changes as well. So I don't say any of this out of a position of bragging or I'm better than you. I say this out of true humility, because I want the best for people, and this had a profound impact on my life. So how could I once again not share this with you? So tonight we are talking about the relationship between fathers and daughters, which is extremely important. Past couple of weeks we've been talking about the relationship between fathers and sons. And just like that relationship, this relationship is equally as important. Maybe even more so, because I don't know, there's just something different. I can't articulate it between a relationship between a father and a daughter. And I'm blessed because I have both a son and a daughter. But it's a different kind of relationship, right? It's completely different. And unless you can experience that for yourself, that's hard to understand. But the way that having a daughter changes you, older guys used to say that to me all the time growing up, and I couldn't understand it until I had a daughter of my own. So tonight we're talking about that. I'm gonna share my screen here, and we're gonna get into this stuff. And these things, and then the plan is, this is only a 2-week chapter. We're almost here, done with the end of the year. This is crazy. Really, we only have one more session to go, or I'm sorry, one more chapter out of this workbook to work through. That'll probably take through us to the end of the year. But the plan is this week to lay the foundation, next week to talk about practical steps that we can do as fathers to help our daughters, right, and raise the best daughters that we can. And then after that, we'll get into a man in his life journey and talk about the stages that we go through as men and how we contribute to society in each one of those stages, and some things that we should think about as we progress through those stages. So, share my screen. Actually, let me take this off. Okay. All right. And why is that window in window? I don't know. Don't have time to fix it. Hopefully you guys could see me. So yeah, we're talking about fathers and daughters part 1, and here's a picture of me and my daughter from when we went to New York as a family. And you know, my daughter, she's got a bubbly, artistic, wild kind of personality, and I love it. And I was just sharing with someone the other day at the gym, you know, how our daughter, ever since she was a little girl, there's 2 things apparent about her. One, she loved the water. When she was a baby and we were in Florida, literally the first time she saw the ocean, she ran to it and didn't want to come out. And the second thing is, ever since she's been a baby, I mean, she's like, in a good way, a tornado from the time that she's up in the morning till the time that she crashes at night. She's definitely has my energy. She can go and go and go and go for days. And she's got her mom's spunk and boldness, as well as some of her own stuff mixed in there, and we love her. And it's been awesome to see her grow. And I'm going to be that guy, just like other guys said before me. If you got kids, no matter what age they are, like, make those memories, man, because you blink and before you know it, it's 10 years later and you're like, holy smokes, where did it go? I know that when guys said that to me, I didn't understand, you know, but I guess just maybe a warning, right, to get the most out of it that you can. So, fathers and daughters, part 1. So, 3 challenges for daughters in the introduction of the new womanhood, right, that's taken place in society, or at least in Western culture, over the last couple of decades. First, it's the challenge of a new supreme pursuit from home to career. And we saw this with men as well, right? How in America we started off as an agricultural society. Kids were alongside their father the majority of the day, working out in the field, learning and getting to observe dad as he interacted with people, as he laid the groundwork for a strong foundation. You know, and it was a tight family unit because that's who you survive. That's who you counted on to survive. You know, as we were trying to settle this land as Americans, I guess, or whatever the word would be during that time in history. And then we saw how the Industrial Revolution pulled men out of their homes, and now they were gone for 8, 12, 14 hours a day, only to come back home exhausted and to give what's left over to their families. And then we had from there the world wars that took men out of their homes for months and years at a time, and then when they came back, they were gone. I mean, they were physically present, but they weren't emotionally and mentally present. And what this did was it caused a situation where women had to step up. In doing what women always do when men don't step up, is they take the bull by the horns, and they said, okay, then I will provide for my family. I will keep the family together. I will teach my children. I will provide for my children. I will do all these things. I will do what I did, and now I will do your role as well. Um, and so women got to work, and that was honorable, and that was righteous. But like a lot of things, that started to become corrupted, and we move into the radical feminist moment, and then from there, into modern day, we have boys and men who, or men by age, not men by choice or by maturity, that don't want to leave their home, that are afraid to go out into the world and make a way for themselves. And how can we blame them? Because, they have everything they could need inside the home. Their clothes are getting washed, their meals are getting made. They don't have to support themselves. They can live in their mom's basement till they're late into their 30s, right? All these things are contributing to this, and now, as a result of a lot of those things, in that progression, women are having to choose in a lot of cases between, do I stay home and help raise my family if they're fortunate enough to be in that position, or do I choose a career and work towards that, or do I try to juggle both of those? Right? It's the times we're living in, and I'm not saying that this is wrong or this is right one way or another. It's just pointing out the lay of the land and what women have to deal with today in society, as a result of all those things, and that's what it looks like, right? Regardless if you think it's wrong or if you think it's right. They are being often having to choose between one or the other, or to try to juggle both, which can be quite the challenge in itself, especially if they're a single mom. I mean, I think about my mom, right? Trying to raise 3 kids on her own, not getting any child support from my dad, working 2 to 3 jobs sometimes to keep a roof over our head, to keep food in our stomach, to keep clothes on our back, to keep us warm at night. It was crazy, and I wasn't mature enough at that age to realize that. I blamed my mom for a long time for my dad not wanting to be there, when really it was my dad's fault, right? And I had to apologize to my mom when I was older and I was old enough to realize that. I mean, it's crazy the lengths that my mom went to for us, and the lengths that single moms all around the country, all around the world go to provide for their kids, when we as men run out on our responsibilities. I mean, how dare us? And I know, and I don't want to condemn any guys, because I know some guys that are good, they're great dads, and by no choice of their own, as a result of situations, they can't be involved in their kids' lives as much as they want to be, right? It's complicated. It's a complicated mess. But I don't know if I have much sympathy for the guy who chooses, right, who makes that choice not to be a part of his kids' lives. I feel sorry for that person. The second thing that that we have to look at is the challenge of the decline of traditional feminine values. And we are at another extreme today in the world, in my opinion, because now that has gone so far as to all these things we thought we knew, or that seemed honorable and good, are no longer honorable and good, as even the question of sex and gender is continually debated in our society. And personally, I think that a lot of it is to do away with the natural differences that occur between men and women. right? And anybody with anyone with common sense knows that there is a natural distinction between men and women, and that those natural distinctions lend themselves to certain abilities and certain roles, and do how do I say this? Absolutely, women have been neglected, abused, overlooked, discounted, manipulated, and probably a whole bunch of other verbs and adjectives that I could say if I thought about long enough by men. Right? I've talked about this a number of times. We have shame on us as men because we have abused our position as husbands, as fathers, as friends, as brothers, in whole to women. I mean, it's downright despicable, some of the stuff that is going on and that has come to light about the way that we've chosen to treat the women in our lives. So all we can do is apologize for that and to move forward and to raise our standards of honor and what it really means to be a man and what manhood looks like and what real masculinity looks like. But as a result of those things, it's no wonder that traditional feminine values have been eroded, because we've been one of the chief contributors to that, and our treatment of women who just wanted to be treated as equal people, right? And then third is the challenge of the rise of the absent mom, which is actually pretty crazy when you think about it. Growing up, it was you would see, you would see and you would hear about absent fathers and fatherless homes. Very rarely did you hear about homes that the mom wasn't there. But that's been on the rise, and I actually looked up some stuff that was pretty significant here. So 92% of daughters of single-parent homes, motherless or fatherless, are likelier to end up divorced themselves. That's crazy, right? It's absolutely crazy. They're 164% likelier to have a premarital birth. They're 53%, or they have a 53% chance of marrying as a teenager. And there's no denying the bond that takes place between a mother and her child, right? A mother who carries around her child for 9 months, gives birth to her, then is the primary caretaker of that child for years and years and years, typically, whether the father is there or whether the father isn't, right? And who do kids run to when they need something? They run to mom, right? Because of a mother's natural giftings in nurturing and love and all of those type of things that go along with that. I mean, you could I don't know what the stats are, but I bet you could survey 100 people and my guess would be into the 80s or 90s, that if they were to write down the characteristics of their mother, the characteristics that would get named the most would be loving and nurturing, if I had to guess. Right? So we have these challenges that our daughters are growing up with in this society, and how that affects them, and how that plays out. And these stats came from the U.S. Department of Justice. 2017 was their report, is where I got these from. So now let's talk about our responsibility as fathers and what we contribute to our daughters. And these things that I'm about to talk about, my hope would be that, one, if you are a husband, you will see this stuff and it will help you to gain a better understanding and appreciation for who your wife is, and depending on her story, what she may have dealt with, what she may have been given or not given as a daughter. And you need to realize that just like wounds that happen in our childhood affect us as men, and we have to deal with them, and they affect every area of our lives, right? Our relationships with our wives, our relationship with our kids, our relationship with our employers or employees, the people that we come into every single day. The same thing holds true for women, right? And as we're going to see, that relationship between a father and a daughter is extremely significant. So, if a dad is there, women are going to grow up very secure in their identity as a woman, and what that looks like, right? No matter where that is on the spectrum, being secure in who they were created to be and who they are. There's no denying it. Dads, that comes from us. That's our responsibility. We have the power to speak life and to speak vision into our children. And that's what we're called to do. And that doesn't mean that they might not necessarily get it from mom. They're absolutely going to get it from mom. But there's a difference when it comes from mom and when it comes from dad. Those words land differently depending on who they're coming from. And we need to understand that. They've been affirmed that they are good enough. That comes from dad, right? When we're affirming our daughters that they are good enough. We could say the same for obviously for boys, but we're talking about daughters tonight. And the power that we have as dads to let them know that no matter what they like, I don't know if my daughter, I grew up playing sports, right? Like my wife grew up playing sports. Like that was a big part of both of our identities. I don't know if my daughter's going to play sports. So far, she's more artistically inclined than to play sports. We shoot hoops every now and then in the driveway, but she's not necessarily drawn to it like she is with arts and crafts, right? So I have a choice as a father. Do I see that natural bent in her towards arts and crafts and look to foster that and grow that and speak life into that and encourage her in those things? Or do I say, you know what, I love sports, that's what I'm about, so I'm going to push my daughter towards sports, right? And there's a balance in everything, and there's good in kids participating in sports, but you got to find that line, right? You got to know when to take your foot off the gas and just let your kids, be who they are and grow into who they are and affirm them in what they're doing and who they are. I just had a talk with my daughter probably 2 nights ago. Her dream, one of her dreams is to be on America's Got Talent, right? To sing and play the piano. Okay, so we got her in piano lessons, but some nights she doesn't want to practice. And the other night she threw a huge fit about it, so I had to take her in the bathroom and sit her down and talk to her about the gifts that she's been given in that area. and how it's her responsibility to take those seriously and to work with me and her mom to foster and to grow those gifts, especially if she wants to be on American Idol. And how she's just not going to wake up one day and it's just not going to happen. She's not just going to walk into it. That they don't just let any random people on those shows. You have to prove that you have talent. That for the most part, right? And that takes hard work. So affirming them in what they are good at. When we do this and when the fathers are there, our daughters can easily relate to the opposite sex. They can have healthy relationships. They can see what it's like to have healthy relationships with the opposite sex, and they take our cues. They take their cues from us in the way that they see us treating their mothers. Are we cutting their moms down? Are we talking behind their moms' backs? Are we, condemning them and bashing them and not affirming them? And then what's that say to them? What's that say to their idea about how a man is supposed to treat a woman? Or do we court our wives so our daughters can see that? Do we talk to our daughters about how men are supposed to treat women and the honor that is in that, the responsibility that comes in that, what they should be looking for? And then not only do we discuss that, but do we model that for our daughters, not only with our wives, but with them directly? And we're going to get into, kind of how that practically plays itself out to next week. But I guess that's just a little taste. And then 3, they're going to have highly fulfilling sex lives with their husbands as a result of having good relationships with us. Now I know immediately you're like, well, why? How is that? Right? Because at the end of the day, sex equals trust in a relationship. Despite everything that goes on in society today and how promiscuous we are in society and that there shouldn't be no attachment and all the other BS that goes with all that stuff, right? Trust between a husband and wife ultimately starts as trust between a father and his daughter. And if that trust isn't there and it's skewed, it's going to carry over into the relationship. Just like we've talked about in the past, how our relationships with our fathers and our relationships with our mothers as men, in that woundedness plays a role in our life. When I said this is all connected, I wasn't messing around. I wasn't joking. Like, it's all connected. And until you deal with these things, right, you can't fix those other areas of your life. It doesn't happen like that. You got to go back to the root. And if you want your daughter to have healthy roots, have a healthy relationship with her. And that's not to go to say that there's not going to be any woundedness. It just goes without saying, life has a way of throwing pebbles at us or trying to drop tremendous boulders on us to crush us and see what we're made of. And sometimes, we throw pebbles at our kids, and sometimes, unfortunately, we drop boulders on them. And those things have to be worked out. We all have woundedness, and we all have to deal with that. So, what dad contributes to his daughters if he's not there? 1, they develop personalities that are insecure, personalities that are anxious, and have difficulty in forming healthy relationships with men. And we can all think of somebody that fits this mold, and I guarantee you that if you were to go back and you were to look at or ask them about their relationship with their father, they would tell you that it was bad or that it was non-existent. And remember, their father could be in their life physically, but if he's not in their life supporting them and encouraging them emotionally and mentally, it's just as bad as being a ghost and never being there. 2, or they become inappropriately self-assertive, angry, and promiscuous, right? It's the other extreme. We talked about as men in one of the original weeks about the four faces of manhood: the king face, the friend face, the lover face, and let me see here. What was the fourth one? The king, the lover, the warrior, and the friend, right? And how when we don't get certain things in our lives as kids, we skew those faces, right? And we can go to one extreme or the other. Too much of one of those faces or too little of one of those faces. And the same holds true for women and their main dominant qualities. And when they don't have a healthy relationship with their father, how those things get skewed, right? And they have to compensate because of those things, and how it plays itself out in the dynamics between men and women, right? And like always, I'll share examples from my life. So I didn't have, it's crazy how this plays out, right? So I didn't have a father in my life, so that left me with a wound of rejection and abandonment, right? So I, a lot of times, wasn't very confident in myself. And so what that attracted for me is it attracted me to women or girls who were aggressive, right? And when they were aggressive towards me, that fed into that woundedness, right? Like that spoke to that, because that made me feel chosen. That made me feel accepted, and it couldn't be too aggressive, but more aggressive than normal. So if I think back on the relationships, and not even the relationships, just the way I was out when I was dating or doing what we do, right, as teenagers and young adults, right, interacting with the other sex, I wouldn't be the person that normally made the first move. I would wait for them to come to me. And that is all a result of my woundedness. But them being aggressive and them coming and making the first move to me, in my experience, when I think of all those relationships, every single one of them, right, did not have a very good relationship with their father in some aspect or another. Sometimes it was a really bad relationship, and sometimes dad might have been there physically, but he wasn't really there emotionally and mentally, right? And so their woundedness fed into my woundedness in that way, right? And created this circle of me not stepping up and making that approach, in sitting back and waiting for them, and them then taking the reins and trying to drive everything, which out of all those relationships would then force me out, right? I would get sick of it. I would get sick and tired of the aggressiveness, because after a while it's just too much or not natural, and then it's too late for me to speak my voice and to assert myself. So just some interesting perspective there on that. And then when dad is not there, right, girls are 32 times more likely to run away. They're 20 times likelier to have behavioral disorder traits. They're 20 times likelier to end up in prison. And they're 10 times more likely to battle addiction. Fellas, we cannot underestimate the importance that we play in our kids' lives, in our sons' lives, and in our daughters' lives. This is crazy. And I can't imagine, You wouldn't work. You would. I don't care who you are. You wouldn't wish these things on your worst enemy. And yet, when we don't step up to the calling that we have as men, this is the fallout. These are the consequences. And let's be real, they're only getting worse. So I just want to encourage you again. Oh, they're 9 times more likely to drop out of school too. So I just want to encourage you one last time tonight. Thank you for being here. It's tough, right? It's tough juggling these things, juggling your marriage, juggling your work, juggling your own time to yourself, juggling time with your kids. I get that. I'm not saying that it's easy, but I'm trying to impress upon you how important these things are, right? And I hope that tonight, if you've never seen this before or you've never heard of this stuff, and you're in a relationship, that it would give you some humility and some empathy for your wife or for your girlfriend, and maybe some of the things that she had to deal with, or some of the woundedness that she's working through, whether you've ever talked about it or not, in her life. And it's starting to connect some dots for you there. And then I would encourage you, knowing this now, right, to not be ignorant towards it, and to ask yourself, okay, whether it's verbalized or not, because I don't know if your wife or your girlfriend has gone there, and what I mean gone there is has gone back on those wounds and has touched them and is trying to deal with them, right? Just like us, right? It's scary, it's sensitive, it hurts, but I would encourage you to ask yourself how you can help, or no, I would encourage you to ask God how you can help facilitate that process of healing those wounds. So I love you guys. Thank you for being here tonight. If you have any questions or you need to talk about anything, please hit me up. I'd love to support you and be a friend to you, and to help you however I can, even if it's just listening. All right. So we'll see you tomorrow for the Saturday shout out. Have a good night.